Good morning, everybody. This is Dan Mantz, CEO of the REC Foundation. I am actually connected today from Wyoming. I am actually at Grand Tetons National Parks. Just so you guys know, last year at Vex World, so 2019 Vex Worlds, I planned a 3-week trip to Alaska for July and put it on the calendar then. We had no idea when the EP Summit would be, but I'm like, I need to put this vacation on now. I've never taken more than a week. And with COVID-19, my trip to Alaska got canceled, but because I'm an outdoorsy guy and I had the time on the calendar, decided to do a trip to Colorado and Wyoming. But as you all know, I think the EP Summit is extremely important. I think that the EPs are what drives our engine. And so we made these arrangements for me to actually broadcast the first section. I'm actually camping, so there's no Wi-Fi or phone service, but I drove down to one of the lodges here at Grand Tetons, and I'm actually broadcasting from my truck. So if you'd see, I've got my laptop plugged into my lighter and my phone plugged into a USB port. So anyway, we're going to try to get through this. I'm only on for an hour. As you have questions throughout the week, my staff is going to try to answer them the best they can. If they're Dan specific questions, I will be checking in tonight to get a list of any questions and working with Brad, Tarek, Amelia, and the rest of my staff to make sure that we can answer it. So with that, I want to get started. I have an hour. I know that, let's face it, what's all on our mind is COVID-19. Hopefully many of you got to participate in the town hall we had 2 weeks ago. Grant and I hosted. I think you got a general idea of what we're trying to do. So I do want to use the first part of this presentation to just recap our year, and then I will finish it with some high-level COVID-19 stuff. But as you've seen from the agenda and from what you guys have asked, what you are most interested in is we have 2 full COVID sessions that will be led by Steve Rummel later in this EP Summit. So with that, let's, this is really weird, guys. I'm going to pick up trucks, so the angle's not so good. Okay. All right, Brad, I'm clicking the slide. Here we go. I'm not going to go over our mission and vision, but because we make these presentations shareable, you know, we always want to start with what our mission and vision. Most of you have been EPs for over a year. Looking at the statistics, very few first-time EPers, and I think you know what our program is about. But again, you know, one thing we've done in the 3 years that I've been with the REC Foundation is we're looking to develop programs that aren't just STEM for future scientists, engineers and mathematicians, but we're also looking to develop our next generation of workforce. And therefore, we reflected our vision to include designing and innovating as part of a team, experience failure, persevering, and embracing STEM. And it's very interesting because we did this 2 years ago, and more organizations are taking the same approach that, you know, the iteration is what's important. I think that's what the REC Foundation programs really strive at doing. So. You know, I said this last year at the EP Summit and the RS Summit, and I think sometimes, you know, I praise our EPs so often. I praise our coaches and parents and our students, of course. But, you know, we always have to go back, and what makes this all happen is the staff of the REC Foundation. And I do want to say that we made some org changes last year. I had 8 or 9 direct reports at the time, so we streamlined the organization. And this is what our org chart looks like today. We have 48 employees full-time. We have another 30 or so part-time employees. With COVID-19, we have not laid anybody off. We've not furloughed any of our full-time employees. Of course, the work for the part-timers has been minimal, but we're still going strong. We're still supporting you, and I think that's really important. And again, very proud of our organization. It's been a very challenging calendar year, right? The season was going real well. Of course, we had our normal challenges with, you know, this new student-centered document that Lisa Schultz put out. It was a fantastic addition to our arsenal. So we had some of our questions there. We had code of conduct questions, but overall, it was a pretty smooth season. And then February hit, and the proverbial crap hit the fan, and we adjusted accordingly and had virtual worlds. But what I don't think the people that in the community, or 1 million people in our community, understood is how hard our staff had to work to adapt. So it's really great that they get some recognition and you get to see who they are. I think you all know who supports you as event partners. One thing that did happen in 2019, people don't realize it because VEX Robotics was a world competition, but the REC Foundation itself only supported the United States. And a year ago, the board asked if the REC Foundation would also take over international. So we do have an international staff that reports through Jim Crane. They are REC Foundation employees, but we contract them through IFI International, just in case sometimes you're wondering why they're getting an IFI email, but they are focused on REC Foundation. They work for us and not VEX or not for IFI. We just track through them because as a not-for-profit, that's how we can pay for them. But I think it's really allowed us to take a more global-centric approach to some of our rules. I think it was a good change. I think we had, not intentionally, but a lot of times our focus was US, and I think now when we look at decisions, we understand the international impact too. An example is virtual worlds and COVID-19. It's not just what we're going to do in the US, but what we're going to do globally. But as you can see, this is our map of RSMs as well as our international support. And I always like to share this. When I started at the REC Foundation, it's been 3 years and a month. You know, we always said, I'm going to take this camera off. It's driving me crazy. Oh, no, I won't. Anyway, we always said the pillars of our organization were financial sustainability, clear and open communications, and team and decision making. Last year, we added teamwork as one of our pillars. And so what we try to do internally at the REC Foundation is this is what we're doing to hold us up to make us sustainable is a strong financial organization that can sustain itself, clear communications internally, clear communications to event partners and to our coaches. I have to say that this year, a lot of you noticed I made much more of a presence on the Facebook coaches forums as well as the VEX Robotics forum. For the most part, I asked my staff not to participate in those areas. But I think it's important that I have a presence there. I don't go on and read every forum, but typically if you tag me, I go ahead and I respond to that thread or I'll post important announcements. So, but also remember, for those people who think that's the primary form of communications, at the end of the day, less than 10% of our coaches and EPs are on one of those channels. So we still rely on you reaching out to the RSM or sending emails as a way to communicate to us. But again, we are trying to be more transparent. I think you've seen that this year where we've put a lot of pending information. We shared it with the community first. That's been one of our big goals, is to be more transparent and get input from the community. Okay. So season growth, one of the things we always like to look at is how we did. And it's interesting because as great as our numbers were in 2019, 2020, we still had teams registering on COVID, specifically TSA teams and some late grant teams. So we had a great year, but it would have even been better without COVID-19. So over the last 3 years, we've had 70 countries participate in a VEX Robotics competition. That is the one thing that we track on a 3-year level, but our team registration, one thing I'm proud of the REC Foundation, I'm very proud of, is that we set the number to 0 every year. We don't take any rolling averages. We didn't say this is our HAS. This is the number of teams that actually registered. So we had 14,138, 12,500 VRC teams, so 14,000 VEX IQ teams. As you will recall, we predicted last year at the EP Summit that IQ would overtake VRC sometime late in 2019, and that's exactly what happened. I don't remember if it was October or November, but IQ did overpass VRC. VEXU, we had a small number of teams this year. We're down a little bit. We're still, some of our strongest VEXU countries are still recovering from natural disasters that happened 2 years ago. But I do think that the VEX AI competition will help grow VEXU again. Plus, we have some specific initiatives. And then last year was our first year of RAD. That's the REC Foundation Area Drones. And we had 374 teams register. We would have had a lot more if it wasn't COVID or if we wanted to open it up. But as our pilot year, we wanted to take it calm. So as you can see, a pretty dynamic year. Overall, if you look at our growth for the year, we surpassed 18,000, or excuse me, 28,000, or slightly under 28,000. You can see we continue to grow. Do I think 2020, 2021 will have the same growth? Clearly, I think we will have a dip because of COVID-19 and some states not supporting registering teams. But we do hope to still have a strong program, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And overall, the exact numbers, as you can see, just a bit under 28,000. So, and we also have a lot of other teams that compete in the VEX robotics competition that don't necessarily register through the REC Foundation. You see that in Asia specifically. So when we tell people that it's a million students and we're almost 30,000 teams, and we're part of the largest robotics competition, especially in high school, middle school, the numbers support it. We are a strong, dynamic organization. All right, so this is a slide we presented every single year of the EP Summit, and excuse me. But one of the things we've been able to branch out this year is adding some additional programs, and so our STEM education continuum has actually changed from what you've seen in the past. So first of all, VEX has released exciting pre-K and elementary programs. That's the VEX 1, 2, 3 and VEX Go. And the REC Foundation will be supporting those with classroom challenges. We have a project team led by Shelley, who will be presenting later this week to give more information. But this is super exciting. I mean, it's exciting in multiple ways. It allows it's a fantastic computer programming curriculum in both the VEX 1, 2, 3 and VEX Go. The VEX Go is a great introduction to VEX IQ. It's the same parts, but easier to assemble. I love VEX Go because you build mechanical units before you add power, and both of those will end up with a classroom competition, and we will allow teams, not allow, but we're going to ask teams to present those teams to not compete at a state or world championship to demonstrate. So the REC Foundation will providing some challenges. In the middle school, we've grown to add the drones program, RAD. In high school, again, our standard VRC competition with VEX V5, and now also RAD. And of course, what we announced was the VEX AI competition, and also going to be announced in late August, early September is our manufacturing program that I've been talking about for a couple of years. It's almost ready to go. Dylan will be leading a session on that later. And then there's also a section on the VEX AI competition later this week too, as well as John will be leading a RAD section. So the VEX AI competition it comes at a really good time with COVID-19 because there's no driving, it's all artificial, but we are limiting it to a pilot program this first year. I think the community understands we want to work through our bugs and stuff first too. So and then of course our post-secondary is the old VEXU program, as well as AMC and the VEX AI competition. So AMC is our advanced manufacturing competition. Again, Dylan will be talking more about it later, but this is a non-mobile robotics track, right? So everybody's heard me talk about this before, but I come from robotics. I've spent 20 some years at FANFIC, and not everybody wants to do mobile robotics, but there's a huge, huge need for manufacturing to have robotic operators and robotic technicians and stuff like that. And the skills of the advanced manufacturing competition will translate, will progress directly into those robotics training programs that FANUC and MotoMan and KUKA and all those organizations provide. It's a seamless transition. We're teaching you the fundamentals. The robotics companies I've shared this program with think it's perfect. They love it. And I think that your CTE programs will like this program too. And again, to tout our drones program a little bit, again, not all students want to do mobile robotics, but we need STEM in all students, and drones is another way to capture. So the first year was basically a flying competition, a little bit of programming, a delivery system, but we're working with our partner For the Win to add more programming components and to add more build components and through sensors and stuff like that. So I'm super excited about year 2 of our RAD program. So while our largest programs by far continue to be the VEX robotics competitions, I do think we are trying to, as an REC Foundation, offer different programs for the students that don't want to do mobile robotics. Again, I think I kind of just recapped that. This slide will be available later, but it talks a little bit about the different programs and what they offer. Again, Vex AI, if you haven't seen the announcements either at Virtual Vex Worlds or the EP Summit, again, it's a pilot program, and the teams play the VRC game. It's the same game, but it's full autonomous, no drivers allowed. Again, it's available to VexU and high school. The high school teams, we have received our applications, and Jim will talk about this more, but I think we're getting ready to invite our teams for the year. It's very software intensive, but for those high school teams that are going to do the Vex AI competition, it's great because you get to use the VexU rules, which allows you to do more 3D printed parts and use more of the Vex Pro line and some of the other Vex parts. So I think, again, we'll learn a lot after this pilot year, but I think it's a great progression for those students wanting to do a little bit more computer programming or do 3D printing, etc. One of the things I wanted to highlight, again, I know there's a session on this later this week, is our JROTC program. We've worked with JROTC over the last couple years, and there are grants available for every middle school and high school JROTC program. So last year we had great growth in our first year. This year, the DoD has approved even more money for this program. So if you're an event partner and want to have a JROTC only event, that's great. JROTC teams are also welcome to participate in regular Vex robotics competitions. If you're a coach and you know you have a JROTC program, so say you already have an after-school Vex program or an in-school Vex program, and you're a coach and you have a JROTC, they are eligible for some really good grants, free kits, etc. And it's a good way to bring more diverse students into your program. So Dylan Caldell leads this program, but if you reach out to any of your RSMs, they can give you more information. TSA is a large program with over 4 million student members. Vex has previously been a partner with them, but we are officially their partner now, and we're helping run their competition. So if you're a TSA school and you already have a robotics program, it's a natural fit, right? The registration is separate, but if you pay for registration for Vex Robotics, that includes TSA. So this is a great way to expand your program. Again, we had 323 teams this past year. Normally it would be larger. A lot of them actually register right before their state competitions, and most of those were canceled because of COVID. And then we expanded it to Vex IQ Challenge last year too. So again, be aware, if you have TSA in your school, it's a great way to grow your robotics programs. And also another partner of us, a new partner with us, is Skills USA. Same type of thing. Skills USA is even larger than TSA. I really like their program. They really focus on the robot design, programming, the design notebooks, many of the things we're trying to do in VRC, but they also present this information. And then they compete at local regions, state regions, and then they advance to the US and world championships. So we're official partners with them, and the competitions are run by us. So I know, like in South Texas, there are a lot of Skills USA programs, and that's a great way if your school has Skills USA, it's a great way if you're already doing robotics to be involved in that program too. I've talked about this a lot in the last year, but our Girl Scouts Mia kit that was originally developed for North Texas and piloted in North Texas is now available throughout the U.S. There's a grant application process, so every troop is eligible for a free Mia kit, and we've had really great success in North Texas with this program. What we want is the Girl Scouts to build these Mia kits and then be interested in robotics and start Vex teams, which has happened in North Texas. It's also happened in California. There's been other parts of the country. So this is a great feeder program. I encourage you, if you have not checked out the Mia kit, get with your RSM or go to our website and approach your Girl Scout troops. It's a great way to have them start teams and participate in your competitions. VEX 123, again, it's interactive, programmable, and then VEX Go is another low-cost hands-on construction system. There's a full session that Shelley is leading later. I won't go into a lot of details, but if you haven't seen these two incredible products that VEX has released, I encourage you to do so. RAD, I think we've talked enough about RAD. And then we talked about the AMC program, Advanced Manufacturing Competition Program. Again, I think I've talked enough about that. This is what it looks like for those of you that haven't seen it yet. It's going to kit you actually build this robot. It's a little 5-axis robot. They've really worked on it. They've added potentiometers and programming to reduce the backlash. So it's like a mini industrial robot. It's all VEX parts, but there are a lot of new VEX parts. And you also can build two types of conveyor systems. And really, again, I don't want to steal Dylan's thunder, but you really simulate what I would call a distribution center, right? The challenges will be sorting parts and stacking parts, etc. But the whole process, so RoboMatter, one of our educational partners, has done a fantastic job developing the curriculum that goes with this. There's 12 or 14 lessons. And I have to tell you, when you go through this program and you do these lessons, your students will have a huge head start going into the trades. They will already understand coordinate systems and motion and some of those concepts that people aren't learning until they finish high school or college. And then they'll have fun doing it too. So super excited about this program. Again, the pilot program will start in September, end of August, September, and then we'll have limited releases in January and a full season starting in April of next year. A World Championship. So we 100% intend to have VEX Worlds. It will be at the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center in Dallas. We partnered with the Dallas Sports Commission, which has been a fantastic partner. We're working with them from ideas to bring Dallas sports teams to VEX Worlds. So there's interactive sports exhibits. We want to encourage the students to visit Dallas. It's a nice thing about this is everything, if you choose, you'll be able to get a hotel within walking distance of the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center. So there will no need for shuttle buses, no need for driving and parking. There's plenty of hotel space within walking distance, plenty of restaurants. We've also changed up the format this year, and Brad Lauer will be making a presentation later in the EP Summit, so I don't want to steal his thunder. But we have changed up the format to allow more teams to participate. So we've heard you loud and clear that it's harder and harder to get into VEX Worlds. Last year, less than 5% of the teams qualified. So we took a step back and we looked at what we can do different, and we do have a path. And that path will include some teams that qualified in for 2020 VEX Worlds that didn't get to compete. So for example, we've already announced that if you were an Excellence Award winner or an Online Challenge Award winner, or you were a champion in 2019, all those teams' invitations will carry forward to 2021. But we're also looking at other teams too. But we want to have a regular season the best we can first, and then open it up to some of those teams. So a lot more coming. Brad will be talking about it later this week. But VEX Worlds is on. I feel very confident that while our regular season will have a lot of challenges and will ought to be different, that by April we will have a normal VEX Worlds. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. All right, COVID-19. So as I said, we will have a 2021 season, but we'll look different. And we got your feedback. I know Jim Crane sent out a survey, and when you EPs asked what you wanted to hear about, COVID-19 was by far the #1 choice. I think opening remarks from Dan Mantz was like really low on the list, but we decided to do it anyway. But we have multiple sessions on COVID-19. Steve Rummel is leading these sessions, and he will be specifically discussing the REC Foundation's response. The topics he will cover include the scope of the challenge brought by COVID-19, our approach, the season restart guide, which Steve and others in our organization have been working diligently on to have available for this week, event options for the 2021 season. I've been on the forum, so many of you know, even before Steve worked out a lot of the details, it's time to bring back skills only matches, and not only just skills only at a school or a library, but a skills only even virtually. It's a great way for students to still build robots, to measure their success, and then to do the iteration. So I still think we'll have many states that will have our standard competitions. There are states, our EPs, that have reached out to us multiple times and said, hey, we plan to have regular competitions. I've already reserved dates. We know there'll be other states that the schools are trying to keep competitions to under 10 people, or gatherings to under 10 people or under 50 people. And so they may have face-to-face competitions too, but it'll look differently. But for those states that aren't, or school districts that aren't going to support the standard challenges and competitions, we still have skills. And of course, we still have online challenges. So as you saw already, we've released 2 new online challenges already, and we'll continue to release new online challenges. Those will have earlier delivery, earlier deadlines, so that we can have them more. And that's something that you can do as coaches and EPs to still keep your students engaged. So I want to bring up again, I know this went out in the email blast, and I also think it's something I talked about in the town hall, but we've had a lot of people say, you know, why don't we reduce the registration fees this year, or some things like that. And at the end of the day, the REC Foundation is a not-for-profit business. We don't make any money. At least we operate in the black now, but we're not trying to generate profits. But it does take money to run our organization. And I think for most not-profits, I think we are very, very efficient. Our numbers this year were 11%. Only 11% of our funding went to operations. The rest went to programs. So I think we're a very efficient program. I mean, we're supporting 1 million students. We're supporting close to 30,000 teams with 48 full-time staff. It's really an amazing accomplishment. But we do use the registration fees. It ends up being on the revenue side about 25% of our income. The rest comes from grants, but most of those grants are specific to starting teams or supporting events and stuff like that. So the registration fees pay for the regional support manager, your day-to-day contact for running your events and coaching your teams. It pays for robot events. I think we made some great changes to robot events in the last 3 years. It continues to get better and better. It's so good, matter of fact, that other not-for-profits come and ask if they can use robot events now. So we're supporting other organizations with robot events. It's become such a good registration tool. Tournament manager, again, those developers that work on that don't come for free. And then the volunteer management system that we developed starting 2 years ago from the ground up. Remember, when I joined the REC Foundation, we were going to buy a volunteer management system, and it was going to cost us 50 grand before support. And we went back and talked to the developers, and we decided we'd develop what we wanted with exactly how we wanted. We've used it at Vex Worlds, and now we're to the point where we're going to roll it out that event partners can use it too. But again, all that stuff costs money. Online challenges, there's a staff person, Tanya Weber. I think she's got a session later on. I shouldn't say I think, I know she's got a session later this week on online challenges, but it's her job to keep those things rolling and judging. Our operating costs, we do have an office in Greenville, Texas. Our rent's under $6,000 a month. It's not an expensive office, but still got to pay the electricity. All the written materials and documentation, that's what a lot of our staff's been working on from COVID-19. And then, of course, the development of the yearly challenges. The GDC is not just Vex. It's Vex and the REC Foundation and a couple other people. But, I mean, I belong to the GDC on a high-level review basis, but the hours that GDC puts in to have those challenges and answer the questions and stuff like that takes a lot of time, and it takes funding to pay for them. And then, of course, the entire competition structure, game manuals, judging tools, volunteer training resources and stuff. So that's how we use registration fees. So if this sounds like a blatant attempt to encourage you to register this year, it absolutely is. I am not trying to beat around the bush. I'm very concerned that a lot of people are saying, we'll sit this out this year. You know, we'll still have Vex in our school. we'll still build robots, but we're not going to go to any competitions, so why pay the registration fee? So we're working really, really hard to create more online challenges, to create virtual solutions, to create the skills-only events so that you will register. So I'm not trying to use scare tactics here or anything like that. I just want you as the EPs and coaches to know that we do rely on that revenue, and we want to continue to provide the same great level of support we have in the past. So please register your teams, even if the season looks a little bit different. So that was my main. I have more slides, but before we do that, I'm going to check and see if there's any questions that I need to answer right away. So, question: are there any plans to coordinate the AMC competition curriculum with tie-ins to the sim course by PLTW? When we first originally launched AMC, we did talk to PLTW a little bit, and I am very familiar with their sim course, but we kind of went our own path for now. But this is probably actually a real good poke to say, hey, it's time to revisit with PLT what we're doing. Very similar to how our VEX Robotics competitions, right? If you're into their principles of engineering, it's not a direct tie into the VEX Robotics competition, but PLTW's data itself shows that there are students that do principles of engineering that also participate in VRC. The material, it actually it registers better, and I think there could be a tie-in there too. So actually not something we have actively looked at, but it's something we will step back and take a look at. Will AI be open to all high school teams in 2021-2022 season, or will the teams need to apply for a spot? Right now, we plan to have it open to all teams. That is our plan moving forward. So this pilot year, figure things out and then open it to all teams in 2021, 2022. Matter of fact, that's my dream, right? I hope that that every state, every country has high school and college VEX AI competition teams. But it is a pilot year, and we don't know what we don't know yet. So this is being recorded, and I do want to put a caveat there that depending on what we learn this pilot year, maybe we would need a second larger pilot year. But right now, our plans are to opening it up to everybody. So, okay, let me see if there's any other questions. Guys? Oh. Hey, Brad and Ruben, I can't see the questions on my laptop here.
All right, we'll send you a couple more here, but if you look, open Q&A on the right side of your screen, you'll see all the questions that are coming in real time along with the answers.
Yeah, it's not showing up on mine, so sorry. So just so the audience out there, everybody else that's presenting this week is doing it from their home offices or the Greenville office. So nobody else is doing it from a truck in Wyoming. So these technical difficulties I expect will be a lot less going forward. So Brad, I'm still not able to see it, so I'm going to need you to move the questions to Slack for me.
Perfect. Well, let me toss you one right now. We have a question. Did we hear you correctly when you said that Excellence Award winners from the state competitions this past season will be invited to VEX Worlds 2021?
I'm sorry, I did not. If that's how I said it, I apologize. I meant the Excellent Award winners from Worlds in 2019. They're automatically invited to the following Worlds. So our Excellence winners at VEX Worlds 2019 would have been invited to 2020. Clearly, with 2020 going to a virtual format, we're extending their invitation to 2021. And that also works for the online challenge winners as well as the community award winners.
Perfect, thank you. And that was another question. about 2019 VEX Worlds winners, such as online challenge winners, previous tournament champions, in addition to those Excellence Award winners? Will all of those be receiving invitations to VEX Worlds?
Yes, anybody, again, that would have been invited, automatically invited to 2020 from 2019 will be invited to 2021. So all those 2019 spots have been allocated for 2021. And then, and then of course the 2020 excellence. So that was 2019 was the Excellence Award winner and tournament champions. The Community Award winners were actually 2020. So even though we had a virtual VEX Worlds, we did have the 10 Community Award winners, and they will also be invited to 2021 VEX Worlds.
Yeah, that's a great clarification. I know that we've gotten a couple questions about that, so thanks, Dan. I have another one shifting gears a little bit, and that is it still possible to get in on VAIC?
I cannot answer that question. Jim Crane will need to answer that question. He has a session coming up. It's either later today or tomorrow, so please ask that question then. The last I knew, last time I talked to Jim, we were at like 45 slots were taken. So please ask Jim that question later on in the EP conference.
Perfect, Dan. And those of you out there who are also asking, when will the applications for AI be reviewed? I think that's a question best for Jim a little bit later here at the EP Summit. A next question is, where do we find grant information? And I assume that they're asking about team grant information, Dan.
Yeah, they can go to the REC Foundation website, and there's lots of information on grants there. Brad, you can probably give the direct link. You can probably email them or the direct link to it. But if you go to the REC Foundation website, we have a full grants page that explains the grants, and then you can apply to the grants through robot events.
Yes,
I also highly recommend anybody wanting to apply for grants to call their regional support manager. I think that's at the end of the day, your regional support manager can walk you through the process, and they'll also help you answer any questions, and they'll also be able to follow up on your behalf. So I highly encourage you, if you're going to apply for any grants, first please contact your regional support manager.
Perfect. I also see a question about whether or not that includes team grants or event partner grants. I know you just addressed team grants, yeah. Dan, and for everyone's reference, that's roboticseducation.org/grants, and we'll make sure that that's available here after the call. But on to the question: does that include event partner grants, Dan?
Yes, that's a great question, and I'm going to be transparent, Dan, here. So we didn't really have a lot of EP grants, and one of the very first things I did when I joined the REC Foundation is work with our sponsors to get more EP grants. And I think we had obviously the state championship improvement grant, we had the trailer grants, we had grants for fields, what we call the EP support grants, and very, very popular. I would say the trailer grant, I've had more people come up to me and shake my hand and say, thanks for getting us a trailer in our region. But I also think the state championship grants really, really worked. I talked about this a little bit at the town hall when someone asked me what my favorite events were this year. But my first year, I traveled to a lot of state events, and they were good events, and we were accomplishing what we're trying to. But so many of those teams, that was their pinnacle, right? They weren't going to go to VEX Worlds. So we decided we wanted to add, for lack of a better word, more pizzazz to the state championships. And I think the grants have been successful. Every state championship I went to this past year was remarkably better through the grants that we provided. And, an example I use is from New England, the South New England State Championship, where they just had a banner, a big banner where each team got their team picture taken. That's something you do at VEX Worlds. Now to have that at the state level was great. And of course you had the indoor fireworks at Arkansas, and you had better screens at many, many of the state championships. Probably most of the state championship grants we've given out have been used to improving AV and have live streaming and larger screens and stuff like that. So I understand how great the grants were and the trailer grants were. So let's step back and look at the situation we're in. So that money, first of all, some of that money is dried up because some of our sponsors are maybe not giving as much as they were, or some of that money is being reallocated to help teams, right? So I don't think we'll give out as many EP grants this year. So far, I'll be transparent. We don't have any. We have some EP grants approved for the field controller that we do have money for, but right now, I don't foresee having state championship grants. I see a limited number of trailer grants compared to the past. So I do want to say that, set that expectation, because I think the money that we do get will probably be need to allocated to other type of things to get us through this season. So I'm just trying to be transparent. So, but yes, to answer the question, the EP grants will also be through the grant page. I just please set the expectations that there'll be fewer of those available this year.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan. Can you also expand on how retired teachers and coaches no longer coaching teams, taking teams to events can remain active with the VEX Robotics Competition and REC Foundation programs?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. I've never been asked that before. So, one of the things I think we need to look at this year is probably maybe more, non-school based teams, right? So whether we call them club teams or whatever. And I think as former retired teachers or educators, that might be a great opportunity for you to support VEX teams that maybe the school isn't doing any extracurricular activities, but the students still want to participate. We always need judges and referees, and we know it's a fact that former coaches or current coaches often make the best judges and referees. So highly encourage you to get to volunteer to be a judge and a referee, and also maybe as a coach or a teacher you are too busy to be an EP. There's nothing that says to be an EP you have to be an active coach or a teacher. It just so happens that most of them are, and we would love to have more event partners. That's one area that we will still have funding available, is to start new event partners. So I think those are three great opportunities. So the easy one is being a volunteer, and especially as a judge or a referee. Again, coaching a team that's not school related, or becoming an event partner.
Thanks, Dan. I thought that was a great question. And here's another one that I was really excited to see come in. Can you share a little bit more about your vision for the AMC program and how it will continue to evolve, will evolve once it gets started here this fall?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Dylan, if you're listening, I apologize because maybe you have some of this in your presentation. But so year one here, our first year, the students learn the concepts of what I would call industrial robotics. And that's your axes. They actually build a robot right up front. You build a 5-axis robot. We learned about end effectors. Then you learn about conveyor systems and the Internet of Things, which is the interaction. You learn about e-stops and safety. So all those concepts of robotics, excuse me. And you build this robot, you build this conveyor, and you do, or again, what I call warehouse distribution of sorting and stacking, et cetera. But this is just year one of the program. We have some big plans for the AMC. And the number one thing that I'm very open to say is the merging of the AI technology from the VEX AI competition into AMC. Excuse me. So what I envision is that that great technology that VEX has developed for VEX AI competition is exactly how industrial robotics are evolving, right? When I give speeches, I say all 6-axis robots pretty much look the same. There's 12 or 14 major robotics manufacturers out there. My former company, Fanuc, has the largest global market share. But when you look at a 6-axis weld robot, they're very, very similar in design. So the PhDs, they've figured out the kinematics. The MEs have figured out the best efficient design. But what makes a robot different is the software and the sensors and the cameras and basically all those things that we're now calling artificial intelligence. So I think we will take those great programs being developed for VEX AI competition, and we will add that to AMC. And now we have a low-cost, high-value program that's not just teaching introduction to robot concepts and manufacturing, but also introduction to AI, and they're merging them together, and they're really simulating what you see at one of our sponsors' factories, Tesla, right? Tesla has very high capability robots with cameras and AI, and you know, Amazon, basically our students will be doing what they do in those type of factories. And I'm super excited, A, to get the program out this year, but B, what's coming. We have a couple other things that we're looking at too. Pneumatics is another one. I expect that we'll add pneumatics to AMC in year 2, because let's be honest, when you go to a factory floor, robots often have pneumatics for their end effectors and stuff like that. So AI and pneumatics are 2. We're also looking at some other things that I'm not as privy to talk about, but great question. Somebody very insightful of what they think that see the potential what this program could be.
And one more on AMC, Dan, and that is, where can we buy our AMC kits?
Well, the kits will not be available for purchase until either late in the year, but more than likely early next year. Right now we're entering pilot phase. So pilot phase will start at the end of August. And there is some tooling done for the parts. We are purchasing VEX parts for this thing, and VEX will release a robot kit for sale. But right now we want to get through the pilot program. And I don't want to speak for VEX. I know Grant's on the call, but maybe he can touch on this later. But I imagine pre-orders probably maybe at the end of the year. But all our schedules really support a 2021 launch of this program.
That's perfect. I know that another big question is that's out there, shifting gears a little bit, is when and will RSMs be doing new trainings for EPs on existing programs and new programs?
Well, again, there's a couple sessions being led later this week on our virtual teacher trainer program. I think that's a fantastic program where we took our old teacher training program, regional grant program, and we went and did on-site trainings for multiple teachers. Now it's done virtually. This allows us to go to areas since we don't have to travel, we can do smaller teacher trainings now. More localized, and also that material is being shared with the regional support managers. So instead of just our regional grant team doing large trainings, the regional support manager can do a reduced content training for their local area. Again, with the VEX Go, VEX 1, 2, 3, those are VEX education programs that we have a classroom. It's not a competition, it's more of a challenge that goes along with that. So schools will register through the REC Foundation at no charge, but in order to do the challenges. And again, the REC Foundation staff will be trained to provide support, basic support for both of those programs. Again, Shelly's got a session coming up later. For AMC, we will launch our internal training later this year. So all the regional support managers can again provide the basic concepts on that. And then with drones, John leads our drones programs. In year 1, it's not a secret, we probably made a mistake. We said, okay, if you have a drones question, call John. But now we're working on, again, all regional support managers coming up to speed on that program. So as I say often, a regional support manager is your first line of contact in a sense. And if they do not have the tools, we're working to get them the tools to help do the training. But the one I'm most excited about right now is our virtual teacher training program. Again, there's at least one session later this week on that. And another training, and other resources that are available are the VEX education resources. You can get at those resources through the VEX website, or we have an REC Foundation educational resources site that include all those VEX educational resources as well as others. We don't just have the VEX resources there. So the first thing I recommend that everybody on this call do is take the referee certification, right? So everybody, it's available for VEX IQ and VRC. and highly encourage everybody to do that. There's the educator certifications. So I know Jason from RoboMatter has a session later this week on that. And if you have not taken that certification, that's a great tool. And of course, there is the VEX Code VR, which I think millions and millions of people have now taken it through COVID-19. So that's another great resource available to our EPs and coaches, the VEX Code VR. So that's just a few ideas out there. And if you have any specifics, please email the question or contact your RSM.
Thanks, Dan. One of the things that we recognize here during this event partner summit is that we weren't going to be able to answer every single question about every single topic as it comes in. We've obviously done our best to schedule sessions that we think that everyone is most interested in, and then of course we're going to be following up by answering the questions posed here in the Q&A and clarifying any remarks that we made that weren't clear. Just wanted to chime in there to state that AMC is certainly a popular topic this morning, and for those of you here asking in the Q&A, we're definitely working to make sure to get you more AMC information, and thank you so much for taking those. I think that we want to look to start wrapping up here, Dan, but there was another great question that came in. And it's a question about how's the student advisory board going? And is there any opportunity to share what they've been working on?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so student advisory board we announced at VEX Worlds in 2019. And we had a pretty rigid application process. We had hundreds and hundreds of students apply, and we selected a dozen. And I think the first year, it was different, right? The first few meetings, the students were very, very polite. And but I think we got a lot of good ideas. As I say, and Steve actually leads the SAB, and we have other staff that sits on the SAB meetings, like Nancy and Carol, and Cheryl. And that amazed me most about it is we send out email blasts and we send out links of all our resources, and a lot of the students did not know those resources available. So the students showed a lot of empathy on how could they help new teams. So that was one of the themes that came out, is how could they help new teams and how could they help make teams sustainable. So we talked about our resources, and we realized that when we talked about these resources, most of the students didn't know they were there. The VEX knowledge base is a good example. That is one of my go-to resources when I'm on traveling and I'm meeting with coaches and event partners, and they want like more advanced lessons in drive bases or something like that. I said, well, have you gone to the knowledge bases, or have you gone to the STEM labs? And many of our students did not know they were there. So that was very valuable input, and we have action plans into place to do a better job of communicating what resources are available. Matter of fact, I think you've already seen some of the fruits from that. I think our email blasts led by Amelia and Ruby have really improved and have a lot more directed information. Another interesting thing is when COVID-19 hit, we talked about what should our contingency plans, what do we need to do? And Dan Mantz and other people from the REC Foundation always feel that we have to remind that we serve 28,000 teams in 70 countries. So what might be available in California and Texas isn't available necessarily in Thailand or Morocco or some other of these places. And that is particularly true with the design notebook. And it was amazing to me how the students felt that accessibility was really important for all teams, but they also had some ideas on how we can make, for example, the design notebook, if we go to online judging for that, how we can make it fair. And one of my favorite comments, and I think I talked about this at the town hall, is we said, what should we do for the design notebook? I've been a stringent observer of the bound written copy, and it was our students that said, well, why are you asking us? Go ask the experts, go ask the leading engineering firms that are already sponsors. And then there was talks on rules and stuff like that. Now, this is a rule that we have. What's your thoughts on this? Did we clarify it? So mostly it was feedback. We had some students that are moving on and aren't going to participate in year 2. So If we have not opened up the application, we'll be doing it very soon. We're going to open up for more students. We're actually going to increase the size of the SAB, and we're going to push in year 2 more of the SAB members going out and leading their own efforts to get data, right, with the students. So again, very polite the first couple of months of meetings, but I'd say their biggest contribution has been ideas for COVID-19 contingency planning, and again, making us aware that a lot of the things that we think everybody knows about aren't really known about. So that was probably the two. And maybe Steve wants to touch on this later with a written response or something like that. But that was my feedback from year 1. Brad, it looks like I've got 3 minutes. So is there one last question, or are we ready for my final remarks?
One last question, and it's on the student advisory board, and that is, do any VexU students take part on that advisory board, and will the SAB be accepting new applications?
Yep, so again, we did open it up to VexU students our first year, and we had 2 VexU students, and I'll be honest with you, they were our more verbal contributors. They were the ones that really, I guess because they were more comfortable, they were whatever, but in the beginning, they were the ones that kind of carried the SAB at the beginning. And again, we are opening it up. We are going to increase the size of the SAB, and plus we have some students not coming back. So we will be opening up the application very soon. And please remember, it's a full spectrum. So we had international students, we had students that were first-year students, as well as students had been there in the program for 6 or 7 years. So we had the full spectrum of students, and we'll do the same thing. We want to have a representation from rural, city, etc. But that will be coming out soon, and we really encourage your students to apply. I think it's a great opportunity, and I think we'll make the SAB more visible. We did not release the names of the students. That was their choice. We were not going to put them in an uncomfortable position. It's kind of like GDC, right? People want to know who's on GDC, and people wanted to know who's on the SAB, but we respect the privacy of the people on those, because can you imagine if the SAB says, hey, we think this rule is clear, and then hundreds of students out there disagree, and they start spamming that student that's on the SAB, and that's the reality we live in. I don't like it, but that's the reality we live in. So we are keeping the identities quiet, except for the 2 that spoke at Virtual Worlds. Obviously, they gave permission to have their names released. And I think that's the last question, and we're almost out of time. So again, I apologize for the choppiness of my opening remarks. It would have been different even having a virtual EP summit as it was. Me being in a truck in Wyoming makes it even more difficult. But as I say every year, thank you, event partners. We know how important you are to our program. That's why we, did things like the EP grants, and why we're asking for you guys to have a larger voice. My next 10 slides in the presentation were all about EP materials, but they're all going to be covered. Every single slide I had here is going to be covered at sessions. So there's one on the code of conduct, there's one on the student-centered, but also Lisa has been leading the efforts for EP certification and some other resources. And of course, we also had the controversial and not necessarily popular, but we're going to do it again with that, is the background checks for event partners. That's going to be covered by Lauren later this week. So we continue to spend a lot of our resources into providing more resources for the event partners. And that's how we use the COVID-19 stay at home. Is we had a group of people working on documentation and another group of people working on event partner, as well as referee certifications too, which is also going to be talked about. So Lisa's got multiple sessions. I highly encourage event partners to learn about what she and Andy have been working on, and that team, and give your feedback. And that's one thing we really want from this session, is we want feedback on COVID contingency. Again, our perspective has been from the event partner. Some of our staff has pointed out that we haven't asked for a lot of input from coaches. So we do want your feedback when you see the materials. We want to help. The REC Foundation wants to help however we can get through this. It's going to be a difficult and unusual season. So we want your feedback. We want your feedback on all the EP materials that we've developed. We want your feedback on the changes we've made for judging too. So we're not an autocratic organization. At the end of the day, we will overall make a decision we feel best serves our entire population, but we're as good as the input that you guys give us. And you know, one good thing about this virtual event partner summit, there is one good thing that came from this, and that is normally we have 100 event partners fly to whatever city we're in. In the last 2 years, it's been in Greenville, but this year we're going to have over 300 event partners participating because now they can do it virtually. So that gives us an opportunity to share the data with more people, but also to get more feedback. So in summary, thank you for all that you do for the REC Foundation. Thank you for your commitment to our programs, and I wish you all a great week. And with that, if you have any Dan Mantz specific questions, please submit them. Brad and his staff will capture those, and we are committed. When I get back to the office in another week, from here, just so you guys know, I'm going to Yellowstone. I'm whitewater rafting this afternoon and headed to Yellowstone tomorrow. I know you're all jealous, but when I do get back to the office, we are going to go through all the unanswered questions, including the questions from the town hall, and make sure that all those responses are public. So with that, unless there's any final things, Brad, I will bid everybody a goodbye.